What would dealers pay for your silver? What would they pay if it ran all the way up to, I don't know, $120, for instance? Well, this has been a hypothetical. People have been putting out feelers, gathering some opinions, but this is no longer theoretical. The future is now, or I guess the future is last week. A week ago Friday, silver suffered its steepest single-day price drop in history. The 2 days prior to that, I sold most of what I had. We'll just say that's part of why we're back to mostly gold on the tray. And the bucking Mustang, I think, makes a good visual for what happened. Now, the selling that I'm going to get into wasn't significant enough to say, allow me to retire early. It's not going to change my life, but the selling did give some really important information that I think everybody should have. Information we had from the prior silver bull run in 2011, but information that we've lost sight of. Information we've conveniently forgotten. In a nutshell, what it's like to sell silver at the top of a market. Now, let's be clear here. I'm not saying the rally is over. What I am saying is getting to $120 an ounce for silver was a huge run. And based on what we saw in 2011, we should have all known that it wasn't going to be easy to exit at that point in a rally. This point is different. That couldn't happen again, right? Well, it just did.
Now we're going to dive into that further, but first, a quick shout out to channel sponsors Summit Metals. If you're looking for gold and silver, they've got you covered. If you're looking to sell gold and silver, they can help you there too. SummitMetals.com.
So let's start by covering what happened. In September of 2024, I bought a few hundred American Silver Eagles. My all-in price was just under $30. We'll call it $29. Now, I mentioned on Discord Monday, January 6th, that I was planning to sell. And then I mentioned it in a video that I made Tuesday and published Wednesday. Now, I guess this is where the bucking started to happen. $120 was my target sell price, and by the time the video was published, we were more or less there. Now, also for context, the price crash began Thursday evening, went into Friday, January 30th, and that led to a 30% drop in silver spot price. So again, I think this coin is a pretty good visual reference for what happened. Now, we know that spot price hit $120 that Wednesday, but that isn't what I got. Now, this was a local sale. Hopefully, we all know by now that isn't the only way to do it. You can call Summit Metals. They'll give you a quote. But that was the easiest way for me at the time. So I started checking with local shops on Tuesday. And of the 5 local shops that I'm familiar with and can get to quickly, only 2 answered their phone and said that they would buy. Another went to voicemail. That inbox was full. One had a voicemail greeting, said they just weren't buying anything any longer. And the 5th answered, but that's as far as that one got. He wasn't buying either. Now, the 2 that were buying were pretty similar. They were only buying American Silver Eagles. No rounds, no other sovereign coins. Maybe they would have bought these had I brought them in, the Libertads, but I'm not sure that they would have bought these either. I don't know about bars. Every dealer that I spoke to was exhausted to the last one. So I didn't push. Keep that in mind. Your mileage will vary in your own markets. But everything that I'm about to tell you should at least be considered a valid warning, because these are dealers I know would normally buy anything that I have. Now, I had mint tubes of American Silver Eagles. That's important. I also had 20 very nice rounds. That's also important because neither dealer wanted rounds of any kind. Like I just said, they were only buying American Silver Eagles. Now, look, if these seem like unlikely encounters with 2 specific dealers who were just out of their minds, consider the context. By Wednesday, January 30th, the spot price of silver had quadrupled in just over a year. So this is a very specific point in time. In January alone, silver had spiked 50%. So this was not a normal day for silver. This was the spike that people watch for. This was the spike they'll finally consider selling for. And for additional context, I think that this is important. I'm not competing against my local dealers. I'm not looking for the absolute top to get out, to dump my silver on somebody else and leave them holding a bag. My hope would be that everyone is happy. I thought silver was going to drop in price when I went in to sell, but if a local dealer buys my silver and then gets it sold to a long-term buyer, the best case in my mind would have been that nobody realized a loss. Now, I feel like I needed to say that because the day after I sold, the price of silver dropped 30%. And like I said, that was the steepest single day price drop in history. So it was a bigger drop than I was expecting. Now, back to the actual sales, both dealers were paying about $10 back of spot from what I could tell. So by the time that I got to one, it was $108 for an ounce of silver. The other, they were paying $107. Again, that was only for American Silver Eagles. Now, another buyer was willing to give $120 for those ASCs. So my blended average price came in between $116 and $117 an ounce. If you've been to a local coin shop lately, I probably don't need to paint this picture for you, but both of the shops that I went to were like nothing I'd ever seen before. One had only American Silver Eagles, nothing else. The other had American Silver Eagles and just a few random gold coins. Nothing like the typical variety. Now, they both had some collectible silver that, quite honestly, I'm just never interested in enough to look at, but it felt like I had followed in a swarm of locusts. There was just nothing on the shelves. Now, if this concerns you because what you've been accumulating is not American Silver Eagles, or if maybe you're just skeptical that you would run into a similar case, that's fair. I am not trying to convince anyone that this is the only case that you'll encounter. What I'm telling you about is an extreme case at an extreme time. I, of course, wasn't the only person interested in selling silver at $120. The local shops were flooded with sellers, and that flood turned a clear dealer preference for what they like to buy into a hard line of what they actually will. And each market, of course, is going to differ. They're going to differ in how, when, or if they hit that kind of threshold. So make sure you check with your own local markets. This is not meant to scare anybody off. Like I've said, you can always check with the online sites. Summit Metals would be happy to take your phone call. Just recognize that it's not always going to be an ideal case when you go to sell. It's not all going to go your way. So this is just meant as a warning that will help you think through your own exit before you need it. And let's call it good there. Let us know if you sold at the height of the market, at least the short-term market, or maybe you sold at the low. Hopefully you sold at the high and then you bought again on the dip. Let us know, though. It's been a wild few weeks. Love to hear what you're up to. Hit us up in the comments. And while you're there, be sure to hit that like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you want to hear more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.